Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me so much pleasure to welcome all of you on behalf of India Habitat Center and Professor Benoy K Behl. Today's talk is the 45th in his monthly series, Glimpses of Culture. Over the past 4 decades, art historian, filmmaker, and photographer Benoy K Behl has repeatedly traveled to all corners of India and through the many countries of Asia to document art and cultural heritage. In fact, the Limca Book of Records, for its last 20 years, used to give him the record for being the most traveled art historian every year. The breadth of his vast coverage has given a new perspective to the understanding of Indian cultural history. Phenomena which sometimes may have appeared isolated or comparatively unexplained are often better understood and seen in their true cultural context through his broad ranging vision and documentation. Often, he may take us to a well known site, but in our journey with him, we see it against a broad backdrop. The film which he shares with us today, Imperial City of Vijayanagara, is about one of the most glorious empires of the medieval period. In his repeated travels across India, Behl has visited the site of Hampi, the capital of the Vijayanagara Empire, at least 7 times, and his film captures the zest, vigor, and prosperity of that glorious time. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Benoy K. Behl will speak to us about Imperial City of Vijayanagara. I thank you for your attention and over to Professor Behl now.
Thank you very much, Sujata Chatterji. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My many thanks to Ms. Renu Oberoi and the India Habitat Center for this yet again opportunity to share another chapter of the glorious artistic heritage and cultural history of India. My many thanks also to Doordarshan, who have been wonderful to have sponsored the making of my films on cultural history. In this world, which is so commercial, it is indeed very good of Doordarshan to have lived up so well to its role of being a public broadcaster and having sponsored the making of such serious and deeply researched films. Now, in the past many months, we have been tracing the development of the artistic and monumental heritage of the Indian subcontinent. We began about 5,000 years ago in the Indus Valley period, as it is called. And we began with a unique culture. It was a culture in which it seems that there was no army or police, though there was much trade with the rest of the world, though there was much technical development, though there was wonderful city planning and so much more. But there was no army or police, it seems. And there is no archaeological evidence as such of any army or police. And there were no weapons of war. There were no depictions of warfare or armies or the such like. From there, we moved on and we came into the period of ancient India, just over 2,000 years ago. And we saw a wonderful art. We saw monuments spread across this country, which were all sponsored by the common people. There were no kings sponsoring temples or stupas in ancient India. It may be misstated by casual historians of the colonial period. But all the inscriptions show that it was the common people. It was the people who donated towards the monuments, and there was this wonderful heritage which was created. What was most remarkable about this heritage was that though deities were depicted, animals were depicted, so many beautiful stories were depicted, epic stories, stories about the spirit within us. But personalities were not depicted in this art, and kings were not depicted, and the happenings of the court were not depicted. All this was considered ephemeral. All this is part of the passing illusion of the material world. The focus of the art was on the eternal, that which is beyond, that which is lasting. And from there we evolved, and by the 7th, 8th century, kings began to directly patronize the making of temples. Gradually, the portraits of kings and other personalities later began to come into the art. So these were changes taking place, and by the 10th century, very large structures began to be made. Earlier, the focus was on the spirit within. And the idea was for a person to come to a temple or come to a stupa and lose himself, lose all his ego to awaken that which is within him, awaken the grace, awaken the gentleness, awaken the kindness, awaken the wisdom which is within him. And now, from the 10th century onwards, the grandeur of the kings who were behind the making of the temples now began to also come into the making of the art and temples. And between the 10th and the 13th centuries, more and more personalities were being depicted. Soldiers began to be seen in the artwork, and the happenings of the world around us began to be seen. And now, with the winds of change, we are coming into the 14th century onwards, and the kingdom of Vijayanagara, its grand capital at Hampi, is a wonderful example of this changed world by then. You have, in fact, for the first time, you have the plinths of royal structures being made out of stone. Till this point in Indian history, stone, the everlasting quality of stone, the eternal quality of stone, had been reserved only for that which is eternal, the spirit within, the deities, and it is and palaces and other pavilions for the use of human beings were made out of wood and other ephemeral materials. Now, here at Vijayanagar, at Hampi, we see the first structures where the plinths of the royal pavilions have begun to be made out of stone. Now, that is a massive change in the history of Indian art and monuments. We also see the continuous depiction of the here and now. We see not only dancers being made. Earlier, you see the dancers which were made were ethereal dancers, heavenly dancers. And now, of course, you see the dancers in the court. So not only are dancers being made, but soldiers are being made. The armies of the king are being depicted. The happenings of the court are being depicted. In fact, the Vijayanagara Empire depended upon its cavalry for its strength and military preparedness. And we see here also the Portuguese merchants who are bringing the Arabian horses to be sold in Vijayanagara. So it is indeed a changed world. There is a great deal of zest, there is much vigor, there is activity in the air and a positive spirit. And it is a changed world that you see here. Now, what is the same which continues from the most ancient of times, from the Indus Valley period itself, in fact, is that India is seen to be a country doing considerable trade with the rest of the world. So, in fact, we also note that the most interaction with the rest of the world and trade was, in fact, in the Deccan and in South India. North India was interacting with the countries in the north, but it is the south of India, it is the Deccan, which was by the sea routes interacting very actively earlier with Rome and then also with Persia and with other countries. And you see all this reflected in this vigorous art. So it is a wonderful world that the monuments of Hampi share with us. And I take great pleasure in showing you this film today. I request Sunil, please show us the film. I will be happy to answer questions after that. Thank you very much.
One of the great ruin sites of southern India, one could say perhaps one of the great ruin sites of all Asia. It's a UNESCO site now, of course, but what is so very fascinating about Hampi is that unlike other royal capitals, it was sacked and abandoned and never again occupied to any extent, so that the ruins there preserve something of what the city was like in the middle of the 16th century. This you cannot study for, let's say, Delhi or other great cities because modern development has overtaken the sites. At Hampi, very little modern development has taken over. There's only one village really that has developed. The rest of the site is in this sort of wilderness. And what a wilderness! One of the most beautiful landscapes to be found anywhere in India. It's a granitic landscape. It's a sort of wild, rock-strewn landscape through which the Tungabhadra flows over rocks.
The beginning of the 14th century saw considerable political disruption in South India and the Deccan. This resulted from the repeated attacks of the Khalji and Tughlaq dynasties from the north. Out of the chaos, the sons of a chieftain named Sangama built a new and powerful kingdom called Vijayanagara, or City of Victory. The Vijayanagara Empire emerged in the mid-14th century and soon encompassed most of South India from coast to coast. It drew a line across the Deccan and prevented the further expansion of the sultanates to the north. By the mid-15th century, the kingdom stretched from North Karnataka to Kerala and from the Malabar Coast to Orissa. At Hampi, on the banks of the Tungabhadra River, was made the imperial capital of Vijayanagara. It was one of the greatest metropolises of the entire medieval world. Foreign travellers who came to the city could scarcely believe what their eyes saw.
This area is very much connected with two interlinking mythological systems. One is to do with Shiva and his consort Pampa, because this is a sacred place to Shiva. The other one is the Ramayana, especially the Kishkinda chapter of the Ramayana, where Rama and Lakshmana, in search of Sita, meet the monkeys. This is supposed to have taken place in the Hampi area. So the area has, I would say, a mythological importance. And this was relevant to a series of chieftains who wanted to become great emperors and who did succeed in this endeavor.
Today, the ruins of Hampi cover more than 30 square kilometers, and more than 500 monuments have been identified. One can imagine what a sight must have met Abdur Razzak, an ambassador of Persia, when he visited Vijayanagar in 1442. He said, "The city of Vijayanagar is such that the pupil of the eye has never beheld a place such as this, nor the ear of intelligence ever been informed that there exists an equal to this anywhere in the world." Domino Paes, a Portuguese visitor to Vijayanagar between 1520 and 1522, says, "About the size of the city, I do not wish to write here because you cannot see all of it from any one place. However, I climbed on a high hill from where I could see a considerable part of it, and I must say that it was as large as Rome and very beautiful to the sight." Domino Paes also says, "The people in this city are countless in number, so much so that I do not wish to put it down, as it may be thought to be fabulous. This is the best provided city in the world. You will find here rubies, emeralds, diamonds, pearls, seed pearls, cloths, and every sort of thing which there is in the world to buy. And then in the evening, there are fairs in which common horses are sold," he says.
One of the most fascinating aspects of a study of this site is that here we have all different types of architecture. If you go to earlier Hindu capitals, let's say Tanjore on the Kaveri Delta, you go to Halebid of the Hoyslas, you can see almost nothing except temples. But if you go to Hampi in the 14th, 15th and 16th centuries on the Tungabhadra River, not only do you find temples, you find fortifications, you find gateways, you find granaries, you find stables, you find the remnants of palaces, of audience halls, of ceremonial platforms, of pleasure pavilions, of bathing ponds. You have a whole range of different architectures so that you can get the best possible idea of what really this place was like. And it's all set in this enormous scale over about 25 square kilometers. And in this area, we have alignments of structures which are now ruined, which give us indications of the roads. So we've been able to work out the road system that converged on the central palace zone. And we've been able to distinguish an area that we call the royal center of the city from the sacred center of the city. So we are building up a picture of what really life was like at one of the greatest capitals of India. To this, we add the historical data that's available to us. Many of the temples and the other monuments there have inscriptions in medieval Kannada mostly, and this gives us information about when the buildings were built, who paid for them, which kings were involved. And then we have the accounts of the Persian, Italian and Portuguese visitors to the site, because this being one of the richest cities in Asia, it attracted a continuous stream of visitors who wanted to trade with the Vijayanagara kings. The kings were extremely interested in having horses, which didn't do well in this part of India, so the Arabs and later the Portuguese monopolized the trade and shipping of horses from the Arabian Peninsula to the west coast of India and then across and through the Ghats to Hampi. And we have reports by these foreigners of what the city was like at the time. And this provides us with a tremendously vivid idea of everyday life and life during particular ceremonies, especially the great Mahanavami, when the kings hosted this enormous feast with parades of animals and troops. Another factor which we must not forget is that South India was the only source of diamonds in the world until modern times. And these diamond mines were in the territories of the Vijayanagara kingdom. After 1565, when Vijayanagara was sacked and lost to the Vijayanagara kings, part of these territories came under Golconda, and therefore these so-called Golconda diamonds became known under this name, and this is where the Europeans were very interested. Now, you couldn't get diamonds in Europe, you had to come to South India, and Vijayanagara, and then Golconda in later times, became one of the places where you could buy diamonds. And this is, I think, another reason why this city was so very important, and stories about it circulated beyond India in the Timurid courts of Iran, as well as Portugal and Italy.
The Vijayanagara kings rebuilt the Virupaksha temple in the early 15th century at a site which had been venerated since ancient times. The main gateway or Gopura rises to about 170 feet. It is the largest Gopura built at Vijayanagar and a fine example of impressive South Indian gateways. A 13th century mandapa or hall in the Virupaksha temple has ceiling paintings which survive. These are in fact among the rare examples of mural paintings of the early period which remain in the country. The paintings are made on spiritual themes and are full of the vigor of those times. Next to the Virupaksha temple is a group of 8 temples of the 14th century dedicated to Jain Tirthankars. In fact, the kings of ancient India are known to have patronized the establishments of all faiths. And here we see that tradition carried forward well into the medieval period. In fact, the king of Vijayanagar also patronized mosques here at Hampi, and many who worked for him were Muslim. In the palace complex is a massive stone basement. This is what remains of a large structure called the Mahanavami Dibba. The Portuguese traveller Domino Paes writes that it was erected to mark King Krishna Deva Raya's victorious military campaign in Orissa. Originally, there may have been a gorgeously decorated, many-storied pavilion on this platform. It is here that the king celebrated the 9 days of the Mahanavami festival, which marks the victory of Durga over Mahishasura. This was also the occasion when the king used to review the armies and check the preparedness for battle. The spectacular celebrations and parades left a deep impression upon foreign visitors who have described them in great detail. There are reliefs made on the side of the Dibba which show these great processions. The king's armies are shown, and so are hunters and dancers. The military strength of the Vijayanagara Empire was dependent on its cavalry. Horses were exceedingly important to the kings of Vijayanagar. The Portuguese traded extensively with the kingdom of Vijayanagar. They brought large number of horses from Arabia, which they sold to the king here. In fact, this is a theme which features constantly in the friezes at Hampi. The Portuguese traders bringing so many horses, Arabian horses, before the king. In fact, there is one frieze of a Portuguese dancing with joy, and I wonder if it is because he has just made a very good deal. The joyous and exuberant life of the prosperous city of Hampi comes alive in these exquisite friezes. In ancient times, the subject of most Indian sculpture was the divine. Now, it is the here and now, life in the world as we see it, which became the subject of the artists. The men and women are made with robust bodies. Quite often, they are seen gesticulating. The coats, trousers, hats, beards, and upward turned moustaches of the foreigners are keenly observed and represented. This is the first time in India the royal pavilions were made with basements of stone. Previously, palaces were made of wood. The permanence of stone was reserved for structures dedicated to that which was divine, that which was eternal. Here in this time, we see significant changes taking place. There are a large number of palace structures and pleasure pavilions made out of stone which survive at Hampi. The Ramachandra temple was most probably made towards the end of the 15th century. The enclosure wall of the temple continues the themes seen in the friezes of the Mahanavami Dibba. The carvings here are finely finished and have a more controlled and formal presentation than the earlier ones. However, the liveliness of the Dibba carvings is not found here in this courtly style. The lowest panel shows elephants. The second has horses with grooms. And the third has parading soldiers. Above these are dancers and musicians, and the top panel shows the festivities of the Vasantotsav. The figures all move in a clockwise direction towards the eastern gateway of the temple. In the lower four panels, a seated royal figure is made. The rows of men, women and animals are all coming to pay homage to him. These panels display the power of the king, his wealth, his military forces and his queens. On the southern bank of the Tungabhadra River is a great Vaishnava complex. It is approached through a great chariot street and bazaar. A tank is constructed to one side where boat festivals of the deities were once held. At the end of the chariot street is the Vithala temple, made within a large walled enclosure.
The Vithala temple, which is an abandoned monument from the middle of the 16th century, must be considered one of the great showpieces of Hindu religious art in South India. The way in which this rather crude, roughly coursed material, this granite, this local granite, was fashioned to create the most complex architectural interiors, with columns, with cut-out colonnettes and sculptures all out of one block, is among the most amazing virtuoso performances of Indian architecture that we have.
A stone ratha modelled on the wooden processional carts of the temples is made before the mandapa. It had a tower above which was visible till the 19th century. This is not a monolithic structure but is made of carved stones.
Following some of the earlier models of Pallava and Chola architecture from Tamil Nadu, the temple at Vijayanagara was always considered as a planned complex with a wall around it, a monumental gopura or towered gateway on one side, and in the middle the main monument, the main temple itself, with a number of accessory mandapas or columned halls where all sorts of other activities could take place.
On the plinth of the main mandapa of the temple, there is a fine relief of Portuguese merchants with their horses. By this period, the main focus of attention had shifted from plinth reliefs to the many pillars made within the halls. These rearing leogryphs with riders emerging from pillars became the hallmark of Vijayanagar art. These were also a source of inspiration for the Nayaka period which was to follow. The Vijayanagara pillars are carved with a rich variety of forms, drawn from mythology as well as daily life. A Lakshmi Narsimha sculpture carved out of a single rock symbolizes the spirit and power of the Vijayanagara Empire. It was established by King Krishna Deva Raya in 1529. The Narasimha avatar of Vishnu is part human, part lion. He represents the courage and vigor within us with which we would combat the demons of our ignorance. And this monolithic stone representation, 22 feet high, is certainly one which reminds us of that courage and vigor within us. The great capital of the Vijayanagara Empire exhilarates the visitor. The structures and its art speak of a vigor and a zest for life. Indeed, Hampi was one of the most celebrated metropolises of medieval India. Perhaps the comment of Abdur Razzak, ambassador of Persia in the 15th century, best brings alive the prosperous life of Hampi then. He says, "Roses are sold everywhere. These people cannot live without roses, and they look upon them as quite as necessary as food." What a wonderful city and culture this must have been.
So we see here the medieval period. We are bang in the middle of the medieval period. Enormous changes have come about, and the vigor of belief, the vigor of happiness, joy, and prosperity coming from ancient times onwards is still with us. And that is what makes these monuments and the lively art upon them very beautiful and quite captivating. And of course, with the changed themes, with the changed world around us, we may sometimes miss the ancient art of India, that art which is recognized as perhaps the finest art of humankind, that art which melted the ego of the onlooker and created a, a togetherness, awakened the finest within the viewer and took him on a transport of delight to a communion with that which is eternal, that beautiful art which took us to a state of ecstasy. That art may not be there, but it is still a very vigorous, lively, and joyous art. And Vijayanagar is a remarkable monument which reminds us of the finest of qualities and prosperity of the ancient period lasting into the medieval period. And this was the last bastion of the continuing culture which you see here. So I'll be very happy now to take any questions which you may have, and you're requested to please put them in the chat box, and Sujata will please read them out to me. Thank you.
Before I do that, I'd like to take this opportunity to announce our next training, which would be on a Saturday at 6 p.m. on 26th July. And the film is Personalized Love of the Divine about the beautiful Chola bronzes. So please mark that on your calendars. 26th July, Saturday, 6 p.m. We'd love for all of you to be there with us. Thank you so much. Krishna Burle has a comment, fulfilling film and narration.
Thank you so much, Krishna. I'm so glad that you enjoyed it. It's always a pleasure to have you with us.
While we wait for other questions to come in, people might be just typing them in now. Would you like to tell them about our YouTube channel where people can see the...
Yes, there is our YouTube channel, Benoy Behl, on which you might like to see other films. There's a wide range of films covering the art history of India, which is there to be seen. Thank you.
There's another comment from Niluba Roy Chaudhary. I learned so much. Thank you, Benoy, for a really enlightening experience.
I'm so glad you enjoyed it, Nilova. A pleasure to have you with us.
Shuchita Kumar, beautiful film, tempts me to visit the place.
Indeed, you must. It is a wonderful place to visit. It's a wonderful site to visit, and you must climb on top of the hill and see the sunrise from there in the morning. It's a very invigorating site to visit. It's in its own way. It's a unique site in the whole of India with so much that survives, and in the middle of a landscape of huge boulders of granite. Very, very powerful images, and quite a wonderful site. You will enjoy it.
There's, I don't know the name, it's just PowerNet saying, hello, Professor. And another comment by Niluba Roy Chaudhary saying, truly, I'm tempted to visit Hampi, placed firmly on my bucket list.
Great, you will enjoy it.
Rohit Khanna, peak to Hampi, getting your perspective makes me want to go back. Your films are amazing and informative.
I'm so glad that you enjoyed it. And indeed, Hampi is a site that you can visit again and again. And each time you go, you may be filled by that zest for life which pervades the world of Hampi.
Dipankar Mukhopadhyay, as always, a great camera work and narration. Too bad age denied a visit to the area.
Thank you so much for your kindness in saying that. Well, I'm sure that you can still do a trip there.
There's someone, I don't know the name because it's under PowerNet, saying, I want to ask a question of status of lion and human, which is really similar to Cambodian culture.
Yes, of course. There is so much similarity in the cultures of Cambodia and India. And the lion in these cultures symbolizes the courage within us. The courage within us with which we would face the demons of our ignorance. Because the demons in these cultures are ignorance and nothing else. It is our lack of knowledge which is the greatest evil or the demon that there is. And the lion represents the culture, represents the courage which is within us, and the courage which is required, in fact, to be able to face this ignorance and to dispel this ignorance. So there is much use of the lion in Cambodian culture and in Indian culture. Thank you.
Money, moving, inspiring as always. Thank you, Benoy and Sujata. Wonder, how was this magnificent city financed?
Good to have you with us, Mani. And yes, this magnificent city was a capital city. And by this period of time, in fact, for 600-700 years, since before this period of time, already the capitals and the temples, etc., were all being patronized by the kings. So it is the king who is responsible. The various kings, one after the other, were responsible for the making of this great city. And the money comes from extensive trading. It is ever since the Indus Valley period, then later coming into the ancient period, there was very extensive trading in India. And as I mentioned before, in fact, this area of the Deccan traded very considerably. The Deccan had a lot of contact with Rome. In fact, there were colonies of Romans that were staying in the Deccan, and there are hordes and hordes of Roman coins, gold coins, which have been found. And of course, India was known for its as the land of spices. And also in ancient times, India was the only place where you could get diamonds and so much else. So India was, well, fabulously rich. And you see that reflected in the kind of structures which were being made here in Vijayanagara, so that prosperity of India is seen surviving up to this period. And you also see that prosperity in the liveliness of the human depictions which are made. And as the Persian ambassador says, the people here cannot live without roses. The roses are as important to them as what they eat and drink. Indeed, very fine, very, very prosperous culture. Thank you.
Rupal Ahuja, thanks a ton for suggesting visiting Lalun. It was amazing.
Ah, well, I'm so glad you went to Lalung. Lalung is one of the great uh, temples of the early period around the 10th, 11th century, the entire Trans-Himalayan region, and is not very well known. The art is absolutely exquisite, and I'm so glad you took that turn and you went up that road and you saw Lalung. Your having been there makes me feel almost like I went there again. Great.
This is Nilanjan Sanyal. I'm reliving my visit to Hampi back in 2016. I am a little surprised that it grew plentiful roses, as mentioned by the Persian ambassador Razzak. The present barren and hot weather doesn't seem conducive to horticulture.
Of course, there was irrigation. Even now, you see some of the irrigation around the site. There are places where crops are being grown, and there was I'm sure, a great deal of effort had to be put into the cultivation of crops and other things there. And yes, it was a very prosperous time.
Niluma Roy Chaudhary, the fact that it was the first place where diamonds were traded and could be bought is truly fascinating.
Yes, for a very long period of time, India was the only place in the world where you got diamonds, and it was South India. So they were being bought from the Vijayanagara Empire. Later on, they were being bought from the state of Golconda. And yes, There's so much about India which sometimes we are not always so aware of, and the prosperity of India and its trading is something which should never be forgotten. It's a hallmark uh, the, of Indian culture.
Professor, the art of lady painting on the wall of temple are dancing. At Angkor Wat temple, we called them the Apsara dancers. But in that temple, what did we call them? Professor, could you explain that similar culture?
Yes, in the Angkor Wat, you have beautiful apsaras. Apsaras are the ethereal beings. Apsaras are the ones who bring the garlands for the deities. You have apsaras made all the way across Asia, everywhere. You have beautiful apsaras made, for instance, in Sri Lanka, as you're pointing out in Cambodia. You have such beautiful apsaras which are made, and you have them made here. Of course, what has started happening by the 15th century here at Hampi is that you not only have ethereal dancers or apsaras, now you also have uh, people dancing in the court, which are being represented. See, here is a very key difference we must try to understand. In the ancient art, all that is depicted is the divine. So it is eternal themes and it is the heavenly themes which are depicted. Now the change has taken place, and the here and now, the happenings of the world and of the court and soldiers and kings, these things are also beginning to be shown in the art. So most of the dancers that you're seeing in the Hampi friezes are the dancers in the court. And what you're talking about from Angkor Wat are the heavenly dancers. And of course, I have a personal fondness for the ancient period that takes us away from all that is around us, that takes us away to the sanctuary of peace and joy which there is to be found within us. So I have that personal fondness. But the vigor and joy represented and seen in the art of Hampi is undeniably very beautiful. Thank you.
Narayanan Vincent, this is a comment. Thank you, Benoy and Sujata. Wonderful film, great learning. I look forward to more such films.
I'm so glad you enjoyed it. And please be with us and let us enjoy other chapters of cultural history. Thank you.
That's about it. Do you want to talk about our course coming in September?
In September, again, we are going to be giving the course on Indian art, history, and appreciation. The weekend course, which is given at India Habitat Center. So this will be the 20th and 21st of September. It is 2 days uh, spent in all this, 2 days spent in tracing the evolution of the art, and 2 days in which you could, if you choose, be lost in the beauty and grace of the ancient art. So do keep it in mind, 20th and 21st of September.
Some more comments. Meluba Roy Chaudhary, thank you again, Benoy and Sujata. Really enjoyed this experience. Dipankar Mukhopadhyay, Guru Pranam. Angkor Wat original architecture was made by Hindu kings. Later on, some changes made in Buddhist influence.
Yes, and it is very important to realize that spiritually, philosophically, there is so much similarity in all this. Maybe next time talk more about the similarity of the Hindu and Buddhist paths in ancient times. And thank you all very much. My many thanks yet again to the India Habitat Center and to Sunil for an excellent screening. Thank you.